This is Abe Friedhanser from cinemadailyus.com, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with Camille Griffin, the writer and director of one of the best movies I saw this year at the Toronto International Film Festival, Silent Night. How are you, Camille?
Thank you, Abe. Is this a podcast or something? Just so I know, try not to use bad language.
We're going to put it up as video.
Oh, you're going to put it up as video? Okay. So it's good I put some makeup on then. Not that you can probably tell. I'm teasing.
You look great.
Thank you for those. Thank you for those kind words. That means a lot.
Of course. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying to the lady I met before that I've read every comment and every. I will stop now because I've read everything that anyone has said about the film. It's like a terrible impulse. So it's nice to hear when people like it or appreciate it.
Of course. Well, it's interesting that you say that because I was going to say that I don't read film summaries before I watch anything, but I chose to watch this with my family. And so I said, you guys can read about it, see what you want. And they didn't read closely enough because they were pretty surprised about the content. So I'm curious if you suggest that people know a lot about this film or just know, oh, it's with Keira Knightley. It's probably a pleasant, charming comedy. What do you recommend for the viewing experience?
Oh, when I tell people I know, I always have a little warning because I wrote this, and I think you know that, but I wrote this pre-pandemic. I really did. And we finished it before, for instance, the vaccine was introduced. Do you know what I mean? So this film has no double entendre, but given the tragedy of the last few years, I don't want to traumatize people. I obviously did intend to traumatize people enough to get them to think about things, but I don't want this to traumatize people. And I have read some comments of people like, go in blind, that was the experience to have. But if you're watching with your family or children or your parents or people who have lost people I don't think it's fair to trick people. I don't believe in tricking any audience. And I'm glad the trailer doesn't trick people. And some people are saying, oh, the trailer gives too much away. But I don't believe in tricking an audience, no. I think you have to respect your audience. I really do believe the filmmaking is about also the audience. I think there are participants that have to be considered throughout, which is why I've been reading them, but I'll have to stop soon. But I do believe in that, yeah.
That makes sense. And for me, it was a great experience. I like the fact that I didn't know what to expect.
Was it with your parents? Were they okay?
My parents and my wife, it was not what they were expecting. I think they read like the first 2 lines of the summary and then didn't keep going. So.
Were they all right though?
Yes, they were all right.
Okay, good.
So where did the idea for this film come from?
Oh, I'm smoking. The idea came from a mixture of lots of things. I'll try and paraphrase it because I can talk for too long. It was inspired by my own conflict with my own class system and my own conflict with authority. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily rebellious, but I am. In England, people like to queue, and I see queues and I go, what are they queuing for? There's another queue with half the amount of people in it. So I think there's an obedience that society can and cannot have. So I have brought my children up to think for themselves, and I think and to educate them as much as I can as to what the world is really, because I think it's no point in having a glorious childhood and then becoming 18 and going, Jesus, this is hell. So I do believe in having a debate about things that matter. And I often am the annoying person at a party that wants to talk about something intense, and they're like, God, shut the hell up, having a party. So I think that for me, the film was intended to deliver a debate, to ask questions. And also it was partly inspired, particularly, I suppose, my children had just watched War Horse. And I remember as a kid I think I learned about a nuclear war way too early. And for 2 years, I couldn't sleep, And they said, what would you do if there was a war? I was like, well, it wouldn't be really, it wouldn't be good. So we got 2 options. We try and survive. We might end up having to eat each other, or we have a nice dinner and we take my tramadol because I had an operation and I'm saving them up. And they were like, we're not taking any pills. We're gonna, So it was inspired by my conflict with my children. This conversation, like, what would we do in that situation? Yeah.
And do you think that with the pandemic now and the vaccine, it's possible that this film can be used by some to argue that we shouldn't be taking vaccines and shouldn't be just sort of blindly listening?
Well, I think it's very, very interesting because I'm passionately pro-vaccine. And I think it's an interesting debate because it's easy for people to go, oh, it's an anti-vax film. But actually, if they understood the film, they'd realize it's a socialist film. And it's very clear that the people who don't want to take the vaccines because they don't give a shit about anyone else. So if you care about society, you take the vaccine. I'm vaccinated, my family is vaccinated, the children are vaccinated. So if you believe in society, which is the film is arguing for, and you believe in the underrepresented and the minorities and government taking care of all, if you believe in a socialist world, that's the message of the film. So for people to misinterpret that as anti-vax, which is the total opposite of the intention of the film, but there is some unfortunate language when the boy uses the word scientist. He's actually talking about college environmentalists. You know, what he's saying is, how do you know during an emergency that you can trust the information you're given? The film is saying, think for yourself. It's definitely not saying, don't take the vaccine. So I think it's a very simplistic, slightly ignorant interpretation of the film. And I don't mean that to be like, oh, everyone's stupid, but I think it's unfortunate, and it hurts me because if someone understands the film, they understand that I'm encouraging people to think independently of governments that we don't trust. And yes, they've got a vaccine out to us, but they screwed everything else up for years, and they still are. So it's an anti-government film. It's definitely not an anti-vaccine film.
I appreciate that distinction.
Yeah, thank you.
And so this is a family affair with your children in the film. And you mentioned having learned about some things a little bit too early in your life. What was it like explaining this very adult concept to your children and they were starring this film?
Well, I didn't have to explain this to them because they have been my children for 13, 14 years. So we have these conversations in our house, and they are remarkable people. I mean, I don't think Roman could have been in Jojo Rabbit had he not had the upbringing he'd had. And, you know, he's an extraordinary actor, and he didn't just get Jojo Rabbit. It took him 2 years to get a job. So when I wrote this, the intention was to make this for zero money, and I was like, what resources do I have? I've got kids, I've got a dog, I've got a house, I've got some film friends, you know, let's make a movie. But actually what was really helpful about having them in the film, because there's also comments about nepotism and what is it nepotistic to hire your family. But I needed children who would be safe in an environment that we had to shoot a lot of material quickly. There were going to be a lot of crew, a lot of cast, and it was tricky material, and they needed to know they were safe. And my kids were safe. They felt safe to handle these difficult subject matters. But the truth is, when you make a film like this, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful. We had a great time. It was hilarious. Roman on the bed scene. I mean, we had to do 20 takes. I couldn't stop laughing. He couldn't stop laughing. So it's interesting. You get the material on the screen and it's traumatizing, but we had a laugh. It was fun. But someone else's child might not have had that experience. They might have been. So when I scream and shout, come on, we've got to get this done. We've got 5 minutes to get this take. It doesn't hurt them, you know? I hope that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And you have some other really great cast members like Keira Knightley, Matthew Goode, Kirby Howell-Baptiste. What can you say just about assembling this really incredible cast?
Well, I'm lucky. I'm very, very lucky. And I was a little bit, I remember on the first day, I was like, you need to show up and be good at your job because you've got a lot of good actors here, like for a first-time filmmaker. So that was important. But Keira, I think Keira was really the glue that made the thing. Matthew Vaughn made it possible, and Matthew took the project to Keira, and she said yes. And I was like, Jesus Christ, we've got Keira Knightley. And Keira, hadn't been for Keira, and I think she made a really brave choice to say yes to this role. And I'm really sorry. That's my kids calling me. Yeah, so Keira came on board first, and then we were very, very thorough at our casting. And I mean, I couldn't have been luckier. I think everyone on that screen, those roles belonged to them. And Kirby was extraordinary. I mean, I think there's conversations about race that had I known what I know now, we would have perhaps made different choices. In the film, I'm intending to talk about the behavior of the white middle classes and the treatment. And I think what was difficult is that Kirby was brought in to play a role. And it's difficult in that circumstance. I mean, she's exceptional in the film, and she was supposed to be a mirror. She's supposed to be the audience going, you know, she has all these, but it wasn't a role where she could fight back. It would have been a different movie. So I think that's very interesting. And her death scene, she's extraordinary. Lucy's extraordinary, but it's perhaps, again, I was saying earlier that there has to be an understanding that when you make a film, you don't always get what you want. And that's not to pass the responsibility on to anyone else. I have to wear all the criticisms of the film, but it wasn't all what I wanted. So that scene was shot later in life because of we had to wrap 2 days early, so we had to come back and do that scene. And there were lots of different debates about how we should kill poor Alex in the movie, and that's the decision we arrived at. But I have to say that it wasn't entirely my decision. But that, you know, I think people don't really. I think it's interesting that people don't understand that when you make a film, I don't have 2 million quid to go or 5 million quid to go make my own movie. You know, you have producers and it's everybody's project. It's a negotiation. But the cast, I think, brought something to the film. And I don't mean this to be overly complimentary, but their talent was endless. Like it was like opening a present and going, oh wow, this present's got an empty bottomless pit. It just they kept giving and giving. I was like, oh my God, I can try this now. I'm going to try this now. Oh my God, what about if we did this? It was so much fun because it was like getting you know, not a toy. I don't want to be rude, like a toy, but it was like getting something that you realize can do multiple things. So the cast are very, very special in the film.
Absolutely. And this film was acquired after Toronto by AMC Plus and RLJE Films in the US, I know. What does that release look like and how do you feel about that?
I mean, thank God for them. I mean, that was announced post Toronto or pre-Toronto. They'd come on board. They were talking to us for a few months earlier. Well, I'm grateful to them because they're not frightened of the film, you know, and I think a lot of studios saw the film the year before. And they were fascinated and really complimented, but they were terrified. And like I said, it's a very unfortunate timing. I hope the film lasts long enough that maybe people come back to it in 5 years and have a different experience, perhaps. But if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't be coming out. So that it's coming out into theatrically in the UK and in America on the 3rd of December and on AMC Plus, and then it goes to their normal streaming service, I think, after that. And it's got it's being picked up all over the world now. So I couldn't be happier because there was a time where a long time I thought no one's going to see this movie.
Well, I look forward to a lot of people seeing it, and with the caveat, of course, that they should have a little bit of an idea what it's about.
Oh, for sure. There should be trigger warnings attached to it. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you, and best of luck with this project.
Yeah, amazing. All right, nice to meet you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.